Hey, Chandler Bolt here, and joining me today is Mike Acker, the man, the myth, the legend. He's a leadership coach, author, and speaker with over 20 years of experience in speaking, leadership development, and organizational management. He's also one of our most famous SPS alumni. He worked with us and has written multiple books. He just said book number 10 comes out in April, which is pretty crazy. He's got a book called Speak with No Fear that's done really well. He's got a bunch of other books, Speak and Meet Virtually, Lead with No Fear, a lot of books. So Mike, welcome. Great to have you here.
Hey, it's great to be here. Really looking forward to this. As you and I were talking not too long ago, the working with SPS ended up changing the trajectory of really what I did. So I'm excited to share a lot about that today. And it's fun discussing the journey that I've been on the last couple of years.
Yeah, it's cool watching your journey. I feel like I've had a front row seat and fun to be a small part of it. So first off, why write a book? And more specifically, why did you decide to write your first book?
So I tried writing a book in my 20s. I'm in my 40s now. So probably around 2006, I actually wrote a book, part of a master's program. At that point in time, I was a senior pastor, and I wrote this book out there, and I didn't know what to do with it. And from there, I sent it out to some publishers. It didn't go anywhere, and I moved on in life. And I always had this desire, though, to get something out there. So fast forward, I moved out of pastoral ministry after 18 years, working in the corporate world, and this time where I was an executive before becoming a consultative sales, and I was coaching on the side. I've always been coaching communication, whether it's my staff members, debaters in college, and it's just part of my story. So I'm doing this on the side, and I had this client come to me who was, in her own words, cheap. It's very frugal. She had written a book, and she had followed, she had written a book and it had taken off, and she now was invited to speak about it. So she wanted to get some help on the communication side. And I'm talking with her. She said, Mike, do you want to trade services? And I said, well, what can you help me with? And she said, well, I wrote a book. I said, I've thought about that. How did you do it? And she said, well, I followed Chandler Bolt's book published. So I went and got the book published and thought, I've thought about writing a book, and I know exactly what I would write about. I had very, very low hopes for it because of my own previous experience, but I followed the SPS book and then the other book that you have. And then I went to the webinar. Then I jumped on a series of 5 sales calls. We can unpack that as well. And then I wrote the book partly to see if I could actually get some traction. And then it exploded. I worked my butt off on it as well, but it exploded. And the work that my friend and I did is she kind of walked me through the process that SPS walks you through. And then I coached her in public speaking. So it was a win-win. So that's how I got to this spot.
Yeah, that's cool. And the book you're referencing, well, I'm assuming it was probably first edition published?
Yeah, first edition. And
so guys, if you haven't heard, if you're listening, the second edition just came out. I was on Mike's podcast and we talked about the second edition of published, but it's just so funny coming full circle with that.
Yeah, and I voted for that cover right there, the red cover.
This one?
Yeah, that was the one
Nice.
that I thought was good.
It stands out a little bit more, huh? It's
yeah, it really does. I like both. I thought it was a great one. And here's what I did is I listened to your audiobook multiple times. And when I signed up for the program, one of the things I know that happens in the program is that a lot of people ask their coaches the things that's already in the program. Well, I didn't know what to ask my coach because I would listen to the program in repeat. And really, I did everything to a T. And so when I went through and signed up, I did the 3-month launch verbatim, tracked everything, did everything you did. And then when I hit release, I was ready because I had worked the system. I always tell people, if there's a system that works and you work it, it will work.
That's awesome. Work the system. How many, how have you sold so many copies of, actually, let me back up. Because I forget, was Speak with No Fear, was that the first book that you published with us, or did you publish one before that?
No, that was the first one. So I met with Rachel, that was the client, probably in about February or March of
Mhm.
2019.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started listening. I didn't sign up for the program until about March.
Mm-hmm.
And then I started the program in March.
Mm-hmm.
And I jumped on a call with one of your consultants there. And she asked me the same question: why do you want to write a book? And I said, I don't really know. I think it'd be a good thing to do. So I think a lot of people know why, or if they don't, we could definitely unpack that. And she's, well, do you want more clients? I'm like, well, it's not really what I do. Do you want to become an authority figure? Well, no. And all those things that I said, well, I don't know. Do you want to quit your job and do this full time? Well, I don't know. I had so low expectations that I really was like, well, let me just work the system and see what comes out of it, which is not how you should goal plan in life, but that's how I did this.
But sometimes it works, right? I mean, I think, this is part of my story. That was my first book. And I think in some ways that's why it kind of unfolded so magically, is because the expectations were low, which I didn't know what I just focused on the book, and that was the end goal. And then by doing that, it opened all these other doors. Right. But then I've also had launches in the past where it's like, oh, it just built up to be such this big thing. And there's so many expectations that it sucks all the fun out of it. And then it's like, no, there's no possible success that's actually a success, because you've got such massive expectations. And it can be so I actually kind of like that. Hey, I just said focus on the book, got low expectations, and then things just started unfolding as you went. How have you sold so many copies of that first book? And what are maybe top 2 or 3 things that have worked well to sell copies?
Yeah. So I had some things that I don't know if everybody can do. And then I have some things that everybody can do.
Cool.
I was doing this coaching on the side, and it was just going into a business account that was not really part of our daily living. And so when the book came out, I went on to Amazon ads and created ads. I didn't study ads. I wasn't part of Sell More Books. I had researched all these other areas except for ads. So I just created my own copy and created a whole bunch of Amazon ads, and then put it to my business account. Well, there was several $1,000s just in this account off to the side. 3 months later, I looked at how much I was spending in ads on Amazon, and I was spending $2,000 a month.
Oh my gosh.
I was not selling $2,000 at that point in time of the book.
Yeah.
But what I found out in retrospect, and you talk about this and Sell More Books, is that I was going for visibility. And all of a sudden my book was highly visible. So a takeaway for anybody there is, what can you do to get the book out there? At this point in time, my career, we actually switched careers right as the book published. And so I was working the book. I took a week off in between and just worked the book like crazy. And that's a great thing for people to do. Just work the book. And so in the midst of that, I didn't have the time though, then afterwards, to take my book places. There's a book called The Shack. And I remember the author driving his book to different retailers. And then once it got out there enough, it hit that tipping point. Think about Malcolm Gladwell, where the book tipped and did that. So that was something that I did. And then I went out there and aggressively got reviews. So Chandler, this is one of the things that you can only do on your first book, I believe. I went into my phone and I pulled up my contact list, man. And I would go down like, I haven't talked to him for a long time. And then I came up with just a copy and paste and put it on my notes. And I'd say, hey, Bob, haven't talked to you for about 5 years. Hope you're doing well. By the way, I just wrote a book. Here's the link. Would you be up for downloading the book for 99 cents and then leaving a review after a couple of days? So I did that to every single person in my Facebook. I had a Facebook at the time. Every single person in my phone book. And I went through, some never responded. Some, it started up conversations we hadn't talked to for a while. But I went and personally said, hey, Chandler, Mike Acker here. Man, it's been a long time. And as a result of that, many people left me reviews. I have not done it for any other books. But once I got to that critical point of 100 reviews, then it starts once again tipping on reviews. The other thing I got that was really important for reviews was one of the most valuable parts of self-publishing in schools, the community. And there's about 2,000 people or plus 3,000 people or something like that. And so I built relationships with them, and we read each other's books and asked for honest, real reviews, not like, hey, good book, but honest, real. And some of those people I'm still in contact with.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it's so funny you mentioned that, because I interviewed Rachel Richards, who she I feel like you guys know each other.
I introduced you to her.
Okay, that's what
Yeah,
it
yeah.
was. That's what it
Because
was.
she was the person who told me to do
Oh,
the
that's
book.
right.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Full circle moment. So she did the same exact thing. And she talked about that on the podcast as well. And then I've just seen that as a commonality, is people who launch with a lot of reviews, who have a lot of reviews, oftentimes they do one-on-one follow-up.
And it really does. Like I did, there's some other things out there that we talk about in SPS, right? Where you have a launch group and stuff, but sometimes a launch group is just not that committed. Yeah, I'll be part of your launch group.
Yeah.
But when you personally reach out to people, and then I didn't stop asking for reviews. So I'm still asking for reviews today. So spot right here. If you are listening and you want to download my book right now, there's a couple books that are cheap, $2.99. Some are more expensive, $5.99 on Kindle. Download, wait for a couple days, read through the whole thing, or browse through it and then leave a review. See, that what I just did right there, I have done on the sidelines of a soccer practice.
Yeah. That's cool. And I see, as we're recording this interview right now, Speak With No Fear, #1 bestseller banner, still holding strong almost 3 years after publishing.
Yeah.
Which is pretty amazing.
Right.
Let's shift gears just a little bit. Or actually, I'll do follow up on the reviews piece. So you're at 700 plus reviews on that book. You mentioned the one-on-one follow up. Any other final tips for people, or things that have worked well for getting reviews?
So it's that persistent asking. It's you can't pay for reviews. Don't try, and don't go out there and do that. I mean, you'll get booted off of Amazon, and I just never even want to risk that. But when it's that persistent asking, it's putting yourself out there. It's being do to others what you want them to do to you. And so I've become a reviewer. So I've read tons of books, just understanding a little bit, which has helped me learn a whole bunch of stuff. But the two things that really, I believe, catapulted my book to that spot was the aggressive advertising that had 100 reviews plus behind it. And then beyond that was I just kept on working that book again and again and again, kept on talking about it. Then I did do a whole bunch of podcast tours. Eventually I signed up for podmatch.com, which is kind of like that pairs you with people. And so I've been on, I don't know, 100 podcasts and talked about my books. And some are great, really get you out there. Some don't go anywhere. But if you want to become a speaker, podcast interviews are a great way for you to practice that skill. And then the biggest thing of all that I would say is, so this is the three components. You're welcome to put this onto SPS now. You have to have a great content. I talk about like a church service. If you go to a church service, you want there to be great content. And otherwise you're going to be like, well, I wasn't there, or political or whatever you're into. But there's got to be great content. Then there's got to be good production. Like if you're going in there and you can't hear the person speaking or the singer singing, or you go to a concert, you can't hear them, then even if it's a great band, it's not going to have anything. And then you got to invite people. And so I really believe that these are the three aspects of a book, that you got to have a great book. And my book is good. And the second edition is even better, but it's novel. It's good. It's not half-hearted. I went through with lots and lots of editing, and then I have good production. Chandler was actually one of the people who voted on the covers and gave me some feedback. So I got some good professional feedback on that. And then what I'm talking about with the reviews and the ads, that's inviting people to come see it.
That's great. I love that framework and those three things. Would you recommend Podmatch? What's the structure? Was it good, not good? How much does it cost? All that stuff.
I think Podmatch is $27 if you do the paid version. And then there's a free version. The thing that the free version doesn't tell you, it doesn't tell you how many people are listening to the podcast.
Okay.
So if you're doing the free version, you might be on one that's, got brand new 5 listeners. But if you are doing the paid version, that you can say, I only want to be on podcasts that have 20,000 plus. And it does get a little bit cumbersome on replying to people. It's become a major deal. The guy who created it, Alex Sanfilippo, did it as a side project that then it just boomed. And so great way to be out there, way easier than the way of just sending out invites to lots of people.
Yeah.
Way easier. However, you just don't know the quality of every podcast.
Cool. That's helpful. I'll check it out, and I'm running that by the team. Shifting gears to the business side of things, how has the book helped you launch and then ultimately grow your business?
Yeah. So at the point of writing the book, my business was, when I felt like it, and some clients that I had and some others by referral reaching out to me and having a 1 hour communication session. And really, quite literally, I'd be like on a walk talking to somebody and charge them like $50. And I was just like, hey, I made $50 on a walk and I helped somebody. And then I was getting more and more serious about it by the time I was writing the book, and was charging more. But it's still a side hobby, maybe do a couple hours, maybe 10 hours, maybe none throughout a month. And when the book came out, I did everything that the book talks about creating emails and all that kind of stuff right there. And creating ways for people to connect. I revamped my website. And I remember that I had 2 incidences that happened within the first couple months that were eye-opening for me. I got a call on my cell phone because my cell phone was just on my website. And I said, yeah, this is Mike. And he said, this is Mike? I said, yeah, this is Mike. He goes, the Mike? And I said, yeah, this is Mike Acker. I didn't know what to say. So he goes, you're the author of Speak with No Fear. And I said, I didn't really know what to do. I think I was driving or something. And I said, that's right, I am. I'm in corporate America. And and he says, I did not know that the author would pick up the phone. It's a big thing, right? So this guy works for royalty in the United Arab Emirates. And I'm talking to him, and he's talking about his presentations to the king of the country, that the part, and there's lots of kings over there. And so it was this mind-boggling thing. So that happened. Then shortly after that, I get another call, similar kind of thing. This is Mike. This is how I always answer my phone. And he goes, Mike Acker? I was like, yeah, this is Mike Acker. And I was a little bit more ready for it at this point in time. He goes, I just got your book. I'm like, oh, well, thank you so much. I said, where'd you get it at? And he goes, I got it at the airport. I said, oh, okay. So you got it on your Kindle? And he said, no, I got it at the airport. I said, what airport? Minneapolis. Like, so you were on your computer? No, I got it at the airport. So you got like what for your phone? Because no, I went into the store and I picked up your book. I got it. I'm flying into Seattle. Can we meet? And so we go to Starbucks, and I'm like, I'm gonna charge him for this. So I charged him to meet up with him for Starbucks, and he holds my book. It feels a little silly as telling this, and he holds my book and he says, "This book is like the Bible to me." and once again, I was like, "Wow, well, thank you." And he's a high level at a major company, and that's when I realized, oh, there's something here. It's a good book.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's been some people who left some trash reviews, like this has no content, which always hurts the author when you first read those. And then you should just get used to them. People aren't going to like everything you do.
Yeah.
And, but that's when I realized. And so then I started creating some systems. So then I went to Author Advantage Live before pandemic shut down the world.
Yeah.
And I was there, and I didn't really know why I was there, Chandler. I knew that my book was onto something, and that I was growing my business, and I had revamped. I started the course building program at the same time, but I'm a busy full-time corporate consultative sales at this point. I switched into, and there's this whole thing like, what am I really doing? So I built a course and filmed about 60 videos, 25 hours of videos. And I did that in the evenings after long days of working with businesses. And then my my course started reaching out. I had a CEO of a multi-billion-dollar brand reach out and was one of the first paid customers. And then I went to the Author Advantage Live. And then I joined the AAA, which the Author Advantage Live, kind of like the mastermind that you did. And I really started thinking about, and this sounds so funny. One of the first things that we were doing was reading E-Myth, which I had read years ago. And I was dogmatic about my usage of systems when I was a pastor. We have systems for everything.
Yeah.
However, in coaching, it was a side hobby, right? And all of a sudden I realized it wasn't a side hobby. It was a business. And if I'm going to run a business, I might as well run a business well.
Yeah.
And so quite literally, I realized I was running a business and then just started putting into systems into place. Yeah. And from there, it's been absolutely amazing. I was in a well-paying job, and then during the pandemic, I switched over. I actually talked with you about doing something there at SPS, but then ended up switching over and creating a 20-hour work week, which has been just quite amazing.
And so how'd you go from starting the business to how'd you make the leap to actually quit your full-time job, have a 20-hour work week and all this? I mean, you had golden handcuffs. This was a legit job paying good money, that's always hard because then it's like, oh, do I quit this? So how did you get to that point and actually build the business to where it was full-time?
Yeah. So
or full-time income, not full-time time, I guess.
Yeah. And I definitely have put some full-time effort into it along the way, but at the same time, it's been really flexible. So the way that I did it was, I mean, at this point in time, all of the money that was happening in the business, I just reinvested into the business. So more promotional ads. We didn't touch it. I think we used it one time for a vacation and used a couple thousand from it for there, but really it was just do that. In fact, I hired a team member and built some more systems because I mean, I'm still on the road, I'm traveling. I wrote my second book on planes, and not about planes, while I was on planes in the airport, and released it during that time. But I had a job that paid. So if you're listening, think about my hand is up in the air all the way up. And then the side pay, when I was at the conference, I thought, when it gets to that height, that's when I'll do it. However, when the pandemic came around, it was probably at to maybe 20% of the height of the other one. That's how much money I was generating. So I was going to have to generate 80% more. But that was with my very, very part-time effort. And I think I was paying someone $10 an hour, 20 hours a week or something. And that was with that. And so my wife and I were talking during the pandemic, which gave me a little bit more time to put into the business. And I was able to ramp up to about 50%. And I realized, you know what, I just put a little bit more effort in and made this much more. And so my wife actually pitched the idea to me. And she said, I'll go back, I'll take a job. Let's move to a place that's a little bit less expensive. We were living in Seattle and Kirkland, and let's move over to near my family. So long story short, I worked both during that time and kind of started transitioning from one to the other with my boss's permission and all that kind of stuff. And then I launched full-time on my 40th birthday and became 100% in this world, knowing that I needed to instantly start generating several $1,000s more a month. But I worked the system, I worked the book, I worked what I was doing in the systems I had created. And it got to a spot where it exceeded last year what I made previously.
That's amazing, man. That's such a cool story, and such a crazy kind of pressure's own moment on your 40th birthday. It's like, all right, it's time to make this happen for real. That's cool. Hey, I got a couple of final questions for you. I noticed you launched the second edition of Speak with No Fear. It looks like just recently, back in June of 2021. So I'm curious about this. I mean, obviously I just did the second edition of Published. And so went through that process, and I'm a big proponent of relaunching your book. And it's actually, I think in gosh, I want to say it's chapter, which chapter? I think it's chapter 1. I talk about the different types of relaunches, and I think everyone should relaunch in some capacity. For some people, it's second edition. For some people, it's updated and revised. For some people, it's just relaunch it with a better cover and that sort of thing, right? So why'd you relaunch, and what are the top 1 or 2 lessons that you learned from that process?
When I was a pastor, we always understood that you should relaunch your church every year because culture is always changing and there's just things that need to be refreshed, reviewed. So a lot of churches, that's in Easter, you redo it on Easter. In the business world, there's different relaunches that happen. And so the company now, as part of Patterson Companies, did a massive rebranding, which is relaunching it and re-looking through. So I already knew the idea of relaunching. My book, sometimes when I would read a review, and there would be one of the 1, 2, 3 stars, I'd say, yeah, there's merit to that. I never planned on this becoming a 700 plus review book, getting on Forbes.com, and people literally reaching out. It's now been published over into Italian, into Polish, and it's getting translated to Thai. And I never planned on that. So I didn't write for that. And so I went back through and actually worked with a professional editor to just redo some of it, to restructure some of it. And editing is the worst part of writing a book. So then I didn't actually know how to relaunch a book. And I wish I had waited, because I would have followed probably what you did. So I actually brand new ISBN, brand new everything, and published his second edition, essentially a full another book. But I was reluctant to stop the first, still am, stop the first edition, because the first edition has 700 reviews and has backlinks everywhere. So I actually kept them simultaneously, and then was trying to work with Amazon to transfer the reviews, but they don't do that.
Yeah.
And so I have 85 reviews on the second book. People keep on buying the first one, but there has been a slow pickup of the second edition.
Yeah.
It's better, and I'll probably just personally, I promote the second book. It's the one with the black top versus the other one, but I'm going to leave the other one out there.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, Mike, because I really thought, I had 800 or 900 reviews on the first edition of published, and I'm thinking I'm not going to lose those reviews. So I'm going to publish under the same listing. And now going through that process, and I think I'm still a slight lean if you have a certain amount of reviews. Like obviously you got a lot of reviews on the book, but I can't tell you how many things that have just been a huge pain in the butt because I did that. And I was just thinking today, I'm like, oh man, I hope this doesn't happen. A couple things, like today I went on the page and I looked at the look inside and I was like, wait, hold up. Why is that the old version? And I don't even know. I'm like, do I have to? So I'm probably going to task that out to my team to reach out to Amazon and change it. But then there was all these little things, like people would say, oh, I've already bought the book. And so Amazon won't let me buy it, like rebuy it for my Kindle. There were things like, it says the published date. So some people say, hey, I went on Amazon, but I can't find the new one. All I can find is the one that was released, but whatever. And so even though it says very clearly second edition, I think it's confused people. And I really now I kind of think I'm teetering on doing what you did and actually keeping both of them there, because it's real estate. And it's real estate for you, for your business, and for your books. But then people can buy multiple copies. Like, I really think, I don't know if I were to go back and do it, I would do it that way, because there's obviously trade-offs, there's pros and cons, and you want the newest book to be outranking the other one. So it's like, man, it's crazy that the first one is still a bestseller and the second one's not yet and has 85 reviews and whatever else.
Right.
And I'll tell you, there's just all these hidden things.
Well, I did a workbook too at the same time.
Yeah.
And then I also redid the audiobook, but I haven't uploaded the audiobook because I'm hesitant of this whole thing. So I don't know if there's a which version is the best. And
do you have the audiobook of the first version up or no?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Which has over 100 audio ones.
If it were me, I would launch the second one as a new audiobook, and I would that's where going back for me, I did it under the same listing. It's a huge pain. On the Audible side, it's even more of a pain. You got to jump through a bunch of hoops, get them to do a bunch of things manually. and I would have, and I've got less reviews on that. I think I've got 130 on the Audible version, and I probably had 60, maybe something like somewhere in there. And so knowing what I know now, I would have just said, well, there's also the time piece, right? Audible's so slow. It would have taken weeks and it would have been delayed if I would have went the publish new route, but I'd probably recommend it. And then one thing I've done, Mike, that might be helpful for listeners and people watching as well is standalone promotion of the audiobook. I'm trying to do a very focused promotion with published. And because I think it's a better reader experience. People are more likely to listen to it. It ties in with this podcast, right? So people listen to this podcast are more likely to listen to the audiobook. People who listen to the audiobook, they hear me talk about the Self-Publishing School podcast, are more likely to listen to the podcast and subscribe. So kind of that ecosystem, people are more likely to listen to it than read it, all that stuff. But one small thing is just making it easy for people to access the audiobook. So we made a short link. It's publishedbook.com/Audible. And so people can go there if they don't have an Audible account, which I was shocked at how many people don't. I mean, it's a huge number. I polled the car like of my family, and these are just like people who read books. I'm like, I was just because I'm like, why is this audiobook not selling better and getting more reviews? Like reviews are just flying in on the regular one, and it's just like creeping up on the audiobook. And out of the car, I think it was like I was the only one that had an Audible account.
Really?
So having the quick link, which is your bounty, which also helps with you get the Audible bounty, but then people can trial, they can use a credit, blah, blah, blah. And then one thing we've done, Mike, is, Amazon or Audible gives you 25 codes. So give those away for free. And just say, hey, who wants a free copy of the audiobook? All I ask is that you just leave a review. And then you can pass out those codes. If you give them away, Audible will give you more. And so you're kind of seeding that. But those are just a couple of things that might work well on the audiobook side of things.
The thing that I look back and I have one of those things where hindsight is 2020, but I think I would do differently is I'd probably only release one book per year. And one of the things, so the first year I released Speak with No Fear, killed it. And then it just really worked it hard. And then I released Write to Speak, about like how to write a speech from scratch, which is actually being used in some colleges. And it's also getting translated into some different languages. So it's gone on, and that one has 120 reviews, something like that. And so it's done well. It's a small little book. So the next year, during the pandemic, remember that book I wrote in my 20s, using the SPS system, I went back and released it. And really just kind of because I had some time, because I wasn't on the road because of consultative sales. And so I was working this, and it's before we decided 100% to jump in. So released it. Now I regret that. I haven't worked that one at all. And I had about 20 reviews or something. And it was just kind of a passion project. And then I released Lead with No Fear. Well, so now I have all these books I'm promoting. That one we pushed. And then the next year, this past year, I did the Screen One, Speak and Meet Virtually. I did the Connect Through Emotional Intelligence on that. I did the workbook. With Speak with No Fear. And I did my relaunch. So really, you can't, if you got 5 balls flying at you, you can't hit all 5.
Yeah.
And you might miss all 5. And so I think that this last year, if I had just done one. Now, on the other side of that, as I go in to do the different things that I do, when I'm working with people and they go, oh, you have 10 books and workbooks. And so it does give me a whole bunch of credibility, which was one of the reasons I was going for it. But now I'm going to be slowing down my publishing calendar.
That's cool. That's super smart. Hey, we're at the home stretch here. I'm going to ask a couple questions, rapid fire. What was the most helpful part of working with SPS with your book?
The very clear, this is what you need to do, and then the mastermind community. 2 answers.
Nice. And then what was you went through our Author Advantage Accelerator program. What was the most helpful part about that, specific to using the book to grow your business?
Realizing that my book and my coaching was a business.
That's big. That's awesome. Hey, Mike, what would be your parting piece of advice for the Mike from years ago, before your first book, and all the other Mikes out there who are thinking about writing and publishing their first book?
Take one book and treat it like it has a lot of potential. Don't expect for it to be a $5,000 a month earner, but treat it like it could, and do the work that might come back to haunt you or to bless you.
That's awesome. Mike, amazing. Guys, if you want to chat with my team and work with us like Mike did, or just put together a plan for your book, we'd be happy to talk to you about your goals for your book, your challenges with your book, next steps, map out a plan. All you have to do is go to self-publishingschool.com/apply, book a call with the team. That's self-publishingschool.com/apply, book a call with the team. We'd be happy to chat with you, put together a strategy, and maybe even give you a little nudge and hold you accountable to getting this thing done. Mike, this is amazing. Where can people go to buy your books, to check out more about what you're up to?
Yeah. If you Google mikeacker.com, I will fill up the first 2 pages. Right there at the very front, you'll find Amazon. Find me on Amazon. A lot of people use my name as a keyword now for communication books. So go to Amazon, type in Mike Acker, mikeacker.com. There's several different places, but love to connect with you.
Cool. Mike, you're the man. It's so cool watching your journey, and just seeing you continue to grow, and man, just do huge things. It's inspiring to me, and I'm sure it's been inspiring to so many people before this podcast, and then today on this interview. So appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks, man. Thanks for having me on the call. Really appreciate it as well.